Leeds Lens. Apologies, I'm a few minutes late today. Unfortunately, I did the usual trick and sent the stream to yesterday's stream, which was very, very smart of me, and I'm really pleased I did that. But as I said, we have got, we have got a lot to get into, as has been the situation throughout the January transfer window so far. I've got to be honest, going into this transfer window, we all expected not a lot of business. I didn't expect a ton of rumours, but actually I've been sort of pleasantly surprised with the amount of rumours going on at this moment in time and at the football club. But to get into it today, we have got an update regarding Strand-Larsen. I'm sure you're slightly bored of me talking about Strand-Larsen, but there's been a mega update, especially on the Crystal Palace side, which is a bit of a disaster. We've talked on the channel before about the idea that Crystal Palace could come in and nick that deal for Leeds United, and it looks like it might just be heading that way. Yeah, Josh, essentially I sent the stream to the wrong stream, mate. It was a bit of a meh. I've done it before. I actually tried to switch it before we started, literally about 10 seconds before, and it didn't go through, which was just brilliant. So it sent to yesterday's stream. So basically I opened yesterday's stream up again, which well done, Scott. Nice one. We're also going to be talking anyway about Daniel Farke and his situation regarding that. Obviously, he's done his sort of Everton pre-match chat today, and there's quite a bit to get into that. There's updates from Anton Stach, Gudmundsson, James, James and Bijol, and to be honest with you, quite a bit of positive news actually, which is nice. A bit of a negative regarding Gudmundsson, but the rest of them looking pretty positive, so we'll talk about that. Farke also got asked about the January transfer window as well, so you'll guess it, we'll talk a bit about that. There was also a bit of an update regarding sort of the Harry Wilson deal as well. This was said by the BBC, Sammy Mockbell of the BBC, so we'll talk about that. And finally, just before I was about to stream actually, I saw a report from Simon Jones in the Daily Mail, which is quite a positive report. It talks all about Leeds United transfer at this moment in time. I had to sign up to a free trial, people, to get this information. It was behind a bloody paywall. But I did do it because, you know, that's what we do here. And it stopped you guys having to do it as well. So I have signed up to the Daily Mail now, which is fantastic to find out the report. But there is some decent information behind that paywall as well. But anyway, let's get into some of you guys' comments. But before we do that, of course, if you can help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively, massively help the channel. As I said, throughout the last few weeks, you guys have been bored of me saying this, but the support genuinely has been unbelievable. I mean, every video is doing 1,000 views, which is crazy from when we were a month ago. So as I said, and that's been helped by you guys dropping the like, dropping the subscription. So if you continue to do that and continue to help me out and get this sort of sub count that is live actually. So if anyone subs now, it will change to 664. Then that would be massively, massively appreciated. But it really just boosts me because I'm a small channel. John Booth says, just knew it wasn't going to happen with JSL. Leeds won't do it because they're already fools. Let the club down this summer. Looks like they're going to let him down, Jan. Player in now, we have more injury woes yet again. Yeah, we do, mate. We do, of course we do. Josh says, what just happened? Yeah, we've talked about that. Rich says the deal was never on just another rumour. I don't think that's entirely true, mate. I don't think it's entirely true. Art says Larsen is the S word. We can't say it, not because we've got kids in the room. We just don't want to get banned, although I've said bloody already this show, so never mind. Can't even score for Wolves. But you get the idea from that. John says, it's not a disaster. It's the same one we thought we would get Mooney's. Mind games, Leeds are idiots. No, they're not. They're really not, mate. Philip says, all right, you lot. Hopefully we can get a couple in. Yeah, that's the positivity we like, Philip. Arthur says, Wolves want 40 million. Josh says, need a new left back now. Luke and Nets would be my pick. You have got better knowledge than I have, mate. Arthur says, no, keep pro. Gudmundsson might play Monday. But let's start with this Strand-Larsen deal, because there is a bit more positivity around it than when I originally made the sort of thumbnail and, of course, the title of this video. But let's start in chronological order, and let's start with what was said earlier in the day, because I'm sure you all saw that, which is that Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook worked together, and they seem to have some sort of partnership, and they basically said that Crystal Palace have held talks with Wolves over the signing of Strand-Larsen. I also looked into Strand-Larsen as well on the betting odds today, and he's now 2-5 to join Crystal Palace, and I think we're like 3 or 4 to 1 now. So they've really stepped up in terms of the betting odds. And actually, with the way this sort of deal's been going so far, actually the betting odds have been quite a good indication beforehand of what's going to happen. Like we saw it, obviously, earlier earlier in the transfer window when it dropped randomly from 30-1 or something, 2-1 for Leeds United to sign Strand-Larsen, and all of a sudden the day after, obviously the news came out from David Ornstein that Leeds United had made an inquiry for Strand-Larsen. So that's kind of the update there. One thing to mention is this as well, because I think when we talk about the Strand-Larsen thing, we've always talked about the idea that Leeds maybe have an advantage because obviously the agent, Tor Pedersen, is actually a Leeds fan, and he does actually use a season ticket holder, which, as I said, cannot be a problem for Leeds United. But I did find out today that Strand-Larsen was originally brought by England by a guy called Matt Hobbs, who is now at Crystal Palace. But he was at Wolves, and he was the one that brought him to brought him to the UK, which kind of explains obviously why Crystal Palace is so strongly linked. We also know with the Crystal Palace situation, it's quite clearly it's just a Mateta deal, innit? If the Mateta deal gets done, I think we're in deep doggies with this Strand-Larsen deal. I do think we're seriously struggling with it if that happens. And we know if you listen to the sort of Crystal Palace end, they are doing, or Mateta, should I say, on personal level, he's doing everything he can to force his way out of Crystal Palace. And I'm like, Philippe, please stop. Philippe, is it Philippe John Mateta? Philippe, anyway, whatever he's called, Felipe Mateta, please stop forcing him out of Crystal Palace. We want to sign Strand-Larsen, mate, and he is your obviously replacement. Please stop forcing him out. But there's been talks today that he's obviously potentially refusing to play. There's been talks today that he's finding a transfer request. I'm not saying all of them true. I don't think he'll probably refuse to play. But there's every chance he does hand in a transfer request. Apparently, he's quite frustrated, actually, with Crystal Palace on the wages he's on. Apparently, he's only on 50 grand a week. I know. I can't believe it. 50 grand a week? That is... Oh, I couldn't think of anything worse than being on 50 grand a week. But apparently, he's on 50 grand a week anyway, and he feels he deserves more because apparently a lot of players in the squad are on a bit more money. To where I'm at with the Strand-Larsen deal, and we'll get some of your guys' chats. As I said, I've always been a bit... not optimistic about this deal is the best way of putting it. I've always felt like this is too ambitious. I've always felt like this is just going to go wrong. I've never really full-on felt that we're going to end up signing Strand-Larsen. Yes, when the news first came out, I was like, oh, wow, David Ornstein's saying it, and his conversion rate from the start to the finish is really good. But if there's record breakers, of course it's Leeds United. And I do think we are slowly heading towards Mateta leaving Crystal Palace and then them going for Strand-Larsen. I do think that's the way we're heading, if I'm being totally honest. And I think from what I'm seeing in the guys in the chat, a lot of what you guys are saying is the case. However, about 2 hours ago, Simon Jones in the Daily Mail. Now the Daily Mail is up and down, let's say, did say, but it's better than Team Talk, for example. It's much better than them, and they definitely have sources. But he did say that there is an increased, or Leeds United are growing increasingly optimistic that actually a deal can be striked for Strand-Larsen. I'll leave that with you. Let's have a look at any of some of your comments anyway. Martin Batterina now linked. Yeah, I've seen that, mate. We can discuss that a bit if you would like. Josh says, even if Strand-Larsen goes to Palace, it's good to see us showing ambition. Our transfer targets gives me hope for the summer. Do you not think though, a bit, Josh, with this? Like, I know what you're saying, and I actually agree with you. Like, I really do. Like, in terms of, like, it is nice to see Leeds United show ambition. It's nice to see Leeds United going for these sort of players. But in the same respect, like, we've done this before, haven't we? Like, we went for Pai Zhao in the summer, we went for Muniz in the summer, neither happened. At what point are we going to be linked to these players and actually get them over the line? But I do know what you're saying. Danny Rumsey says, smash it a like and subscribe, please. Yes, please do that. Thank you, Danny. If you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, as I said, does massively help me. John says, I've seen Leeds too many times. We are very unlucky. We were very lucky to get Buonanotte, to be fair, because our club don't get players in January. That it's now till the summer, even if our directors will let us go down again. Very negative, John. I think, to be fair, mate, we've only lost 1 in our last 10. So, yes, look, the transfer window, of course, we would like to get a striker in. We would like a centre-back. And actually, again, in the Daily Mail sort of today, they did talk about the idea that actually Leeds United priorities still are sort of a striker and a centre-back, which is, I think, something we said on this channel. I don't think they're going to do a centre-back, people. Obviously, we've heard of the update with Bijol. We'll talk about that later. But again, with that news as well, I don't think we're in the market for a centre-back, if I'm being totally honest. So let's bear that in mind. Stephen says, thing is, we've only made an inquiry More worried about us losing Gabby, though, through injury. We won't get Larsen. A lot of negativity in the chat tonight. Is it Thursday? Mate, lads, we're nearly at the end of the week. Come on. It's Friday tomorrow. We'll be offline, you know. Maybe not. I've just seen something in the chat that's made me laugh. There are better strikers out there, and plus we won't pay 40 pence, never mind 40. John, what's this with negativity? Do you hate our board? Is Parag just like, I don't know, not giving you a good time today? What's going on? Danny says, I hope the JCL deal, or JCL? JCB? JSL deal doesn't come off for us. He's had 18 months in England and scored 14 in one season. That's not worth 40 million. I actually do disagree, mate. I think it is. Philip says, you're talking utter waffle, lad. Oh dear. You don't have to watch, mate. You know, you don't have to watch. As Josh actually just says, in a different way. Sebastian says, and when we lost, we could win as well. I'm not fully sure what you mean, Sebastian. I'm not fully sure what you mean, mate. But you can let me, if you want to sort of make it further, I'm not fully sure what you mean. Agent says only the top 6 teams will spend 40 million plus in January in previous windows. You have Calvert-Lewin on 100 grand a week. You're not paying anything like that. All smoke and mirrors to look active. A lot of negativity. Blimey. Anyway, let's move on from Strand-Larsen because I feel like we're heading towards a sort of fire of hate at this moment in time. So we'll swiftly move on from that one, and we'll talk about sort of Daniel Farke and the update regarding the players that are actually at the football club at this moment in time. So let's start with some of the positive news. First of all, we'll start with Anton Stach. Back in team training and could return on Monday. I actually think we've got a lot of players at this moment in time, and Gudmundsson's probably in this camp and a few others maybe in this camp as well, where this game actually is good that it's on a Monday night, because I think if this game was on a Saturday, maybe Stach and Gudmundsson would both miss the game, but obviously with them extra 2 days, maybe it gives them an extra bit of sort of rehabilitation time to be actually be able to feature. And I do think Stach's massively important for the team. Obviously, we know the importance of Gudmundsson, and we can talk about that as well. But Stach on his own, for me, still the best sort of set piece taker we've got. That he's much better than Gruev. I don't think he's not better than Gruev in anything. I think Gruev's quite underrated in what he can bring to this team. But for no doubt, Stach is a much better footballer, much better on the ball. I think he's got a better eye for a pass. He's better in the air. He's better at everything, if we're being totally honest. So he would be a massive plus if we can get back. In terms of the Gudmundsson situation, and I think this is where it's sort of frustrated a lot of people, and I understand the frustration, but he has got an abductor issue. This seems to be a problem with all of our players at the moment. Why are they all getting abductor issues? I have no idea. But apparently he's been missing his training, but he could still feature on Monday night. I hope he's featuring, because I think the alternative, obviously, if Gudmundsson isn't featuring, is that James Justin will probably go to left wing back, which is something that sort of Baron Cross said today. And then you're looking at sort of Ball now, Rodon, and of course Pascal Straub as your back three. That would be a bit of a nightmare, if I'm being honest. And then obviously having Justin at left wing back for me is totally nightmaric, because, and that ain't even a word, because I mean, if you look at the left hand side, naturally we need to offer the width, and obviously with Justin being a right footer, naturally they'll always want to come back inside. I think Justin can do a job in that right, a really good job in the right centre back role. I think he can do a pretty good job at the right wing back role. Left wing back, not a shot, if I'm being totally honest. I don't think that'll work, and I think it will neutralise our left hand side pretty quite violently, if I'm being totally honest. So yeah, and then you've got sort of the Dan James situation, who's back in team training, but obviously naturally needs a bit of time to get Matt Sharpness back, and then he'll be back in maybe in a few weeks. And actually a really positive update, and look, he's out the team, so it's not a brilliant update, but Jakob Bijol, so he's still out for, of course, he won't feature against Everton, but there was fears it would be up to 5 weeks injury, but it's looking like it's going to be more like 2 to 3, which is massively important, because that could be the difference between playing sort of, that could be 3 extra games that now we've got him for that we wouldn't have had, depending on obviously how it falls, and if it's 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Well, that's massively important, because I do think in terms of Bijol, we don't really have a good replacement for that middle centre-back. And I think you saw that when Rodon played in that middle role at the weekend. I didn't think it massively worked. I know he kept a clean sheet, but I didn't think it massively worked, if I'm being totally honest. But that is a positive. Also, an interesting note as well, obviously you got asked about the goalkeeping situation. I think we're all, for the most part, in the opinion that Dallas should continue to keep his place. I don't think Dallas was fantastic, but I'm of that opinion, and we'll be all pleased to know that sort of Daniel Farke is also of that opinion. And he said, look, basically Darlow's our keeper, but obviously we expect Perry to fight for the place and maybe he can get himself back in if the opportunity presents itself. But it looks like Darlow is, I would imagine now Darlow is our keeper for the rest of the season unless he starts having howler after howler or he gets injured. I think that's kind of where we're at. I think he's changed number one and it is now Karl Darlow. I also think, to be fair, because I thought that move happened quite quickly from the switch from Perry to Darlow. And now looking back, I think he probably never fancied him at all. And it was sort of like he put him back in, like it took him a while to put Perry back in the first place, but I feel like he probably wanted to do that just because of how much we spent on Perry and we saw him as that upgrade. But I think I think like he never really liked Perry in the start 11, hence he was so quick to criticise him when he was obviously making mistakes. And then obviously hence the fact that he's moved him out of the game so quick as well. Anyway, let's get into some of your guys' comments. Let's have a look. I'm happy with the transfer rumours so far, that what we've been linked to. I feel the 49ers wait too long, says Philip. Yeah, the problem is, Philip, I know what you're saying, mate, and it always does feel, and I think this is obviously, Parag's created this with what he said in the summer when he obviously mentioned the idea that all the big stories and all the big stuff happens at the end of the transfer window. I remember him saying that, obviously, before the Everton match, funnily enough. And I think that's obviously created that. I do think with the Strand-Larsen deal, mate, and I've said it, I think I said it actually the day it came out, I never felt like it was going to be a quick deal to do. I always felt like Wolves were going to assess their options, look around, see what's possible for them, see if they can get maybe a permanent deal without an obligation to buy sort of in January, and see if they can get terms that are sort of more sort of reasonable to them. And then I think if they don't have that in January, maybe they'd look at something that maybe more Leeds United Street in terms of an obligation to buy, or in terms of maybe giving a player swap in there or something like that to sort of make the deal better for Leeds United. But I think this was always going to take time, because if we could just slap 40 million on the table right now, then I think we could have Strand-Larsen in the building tomorrow, and I do think he'd actually come, because I think we could get it done that quickly. We know Leeds United can't do that, so it's in Wolves' best interest really to keep it going over, assess what's on the table, and assess sort of where they're at. Because potentially, this sounds ridiculous, but potentially, say one of the top 6 strikers goes down injured. Say Gyökeres goes down injured, or I don't know, Sesko goes down. Whoever you want to talk about. If one of them went down injured, maybe that club has a punt on Strand-Larsen in January. And again, that would be maybe an up free front. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but this is why Wolves will want to delay and delay and delay. And the closer you get to the deadline, they'll realise nothing's else on the table, and they'll hopefully, I think Leeds United are hoping, will come back to the table with Leeds United and go, okay, we'll do an obligation to buy with you. And I think that's where we're at a bit with it. So I know what you're saying, but I think that's something to bear in mind. John says we need left wing back cover for Gabby, and I think this is something to bear in mind in it, because obviously Gudmundsson is injured now, but this is just a microcosm of what could end up happening. Like, worst case scenario, obviously Gudmundsson's just out for this Everton game by the looks of it, and he'll obviously be straight back in for the Arsenal game, and that ain't the end of the world. But the problem is with Gudmundsson is, what happens if he does his ACL? What happens if he pulls an hamstring, or sort of does a hamstring in a bad way? What's it called? Tears his hamstring. What happens if a serious injury that puts him out for 2, 3, maybe 4 months happens to Gudmundsson? What does the football club do there? Because let's be honest, Justin maybe for Everton away can do a bit of a job. He cannot do it for a long period of time. And I do think the club will be mad, really, to not bring in some cover. I'm not saying we've got to go and spend a load of money. We've still got a domestic loan available. Go do a domestic loan. Do a European loan. Do a loan. We're not saying, none of us in the chat are saying go and spend £20 million on left back. We're not saying that. But we're just saying be sensible and bring someone in who at least can cover to an extent. I mean, I was saying maybe Harry Amas could come in. And he's someone that's gone on loan to Norwich. I'm not expecting masses and masses of money to be spent. I'm just saying do the sensible thing and bring a bit of a backup option in. And I hope the fact that Gudmundsson's injured at this moment, yes, that's a bad thing, but hopefully you look at the club gucket and go, he's been injured once, that could happen again, because they should do. Because I know Gabriel Gudmundsson isn't an injury-prone player. That is not what we expect from him. He's not in the Nemecha sort of DCL, hopefully, don't get injured, but DCL before he came to the club, Okafor type. He isn't that. But anyone can get injured. I remember Stuart Dallas obviously having an injury that retired him, for goodness sake. So stuff can always happen. We're playing a competitive football match where there's physical duels all the time. People are running at full speed. Injuries can happen. And the club have got to be prepared that Gudmundsson could go down injured at some point. And especially with Jack Harrison leaving as well, who would have been the replacement, even as howling as that is. At least it would have been some replacement. And he's now gone. And actually, Daniel Farke did mention his press conference today. It's something the club might. Well, let me get his exact words, because I've written it down. Where did he say it? That's it. We'll stay awake to the sort of left wing back situation, and I think that's something to bear. I think that's something we've got to do. Sebastian says JSL is also there to make decision where he wants to play. Why should he go to a club without knowing the manager for next season? You could say that about every club, mate. I know what you mean, but you could say that about every club. And I actually think that Daniel Farke is in quite a stable position at this moment. I don't think they'll sack him in the summer at all at this moment. It would have to go drastically wrong. I've always felt if he keeps Leeds United up, then that's the objective at the start of the season. He's obviously not going to lose his job. So unless we're going down, Daniel Farke will be in position next year, in my opinion. Sebastian says the Newcastle match, the one we have lost, we could win as well. Yeah, we could have won that game. Stach's our most important player, says Josh. I kind of agree with you, mate, to an extent. I don't think he is. I think Ampadu probably is, but he's definitely up there. And I think DCL's massively important. I think you're looking at Bijol, DCL, Ampadu, and Stach are probably, and maybe Gudmundsson just because we haven't got a replacement. I think maybe they're our top 5. I have faith in our board, even if Larsen doesn't come yet. Your views on injuries and Monday being a godsend, you're spot on, mate, says Stephen. Thank you very much, mate. Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's have a look. I feel it's happened a few times that the 49ers have waited a bit long and never wait about in transfer windows. That's why we need another left back who forgot we have Byram. Dear desperate times ahead. Strout gets injured in the end of the season. John, what's happened, mate? Has he not had a good day, bro? Josh says, I think Perry was more of a board signing than a Farke one. He's never been keen on him. Yeah, I agree. And I think you can... At the start, when obviously Perry was getting criticised in the press by Daniel Farke, I think we all sort of looked at him and went, oh, Daniel Farke's changing. He's not as sort of... He doesn't just stick with his players all the way through. I never felt that was the situation. I maybe bought into that strategy, but I never really felt it because you saw the treatment of Aronson throughout the season when, let's be honest, I know he's playing well at the moment, Aronson, and he's obviously proved his worth, but Daniel Farke backed him when basically the whole world was telling him not to. So I never felt it was a situation of the situation of sort of he changed as Daniel Farke's approach to things. I just felt he just never was that fancied of Perry, and I think you've seen that now. I think you have seen that. I don't think Farke's changing. I think Farke will still back his players through and through, the ones he actually wants, and you see that with the ones he actually does want. Philip says, stand still and we get left behind because the other teams improve. Yeah, that was Philip, shall I say. Yeah, I agree. People tend to forget it's Perry's first season in the Premier League, says John. I agree with that, mate. I do agree with that. But unfortunately, there's no time for sentiment, is it? Like in that respect, like there isn't. Like we can't just keep playing him if he keeps playing crap. So I know what you're saying, but. And you are right, and hopefully maybe next season he could be better or whatever, but yeah, I think you've got to bear that in mind. Jack says, evening, Scott, match on together. Evening to you too, Jack. Nice to see you in the chat, mate. West Ham have signed 5 players now, is why I'm being negative. Leeds really annoy me, as they're all talk and no action. If no action, you know it all then. Yeah, well, look, the thing with West Ham, mate, is I know what you're saying, but I think I don't want my club to be reactionary. I think when you look at sort of what West Ham are doing at this moment in time, yes, they've bought a lot of players, very, very reactionary, very reactionary. They don't look like it's a sort of all settled board. It doesn't look calm. It looks chaotic. It looks emotional. It looks crap, if we're being totally honest. It looks scattergun. It looks everything that sends you down. Even let's even talk about the Callum Wilson situation. Yes, maybe they've come to the right verdict with Callum Wilson, but Nuno doesn't want him at the football club. The board have argued with him, and eventually the board have just said, you're having him and too bad. That doesn't look like a settled environment. I don't really want that. I know what he's saying in terms of we can't just let other teams improve and improve and improve, but it just strikes of panic buys, and it just strikes of sort of emotional outbursts. That's what I feel. That's what I feel with West Ham. I'm not saying they're going to be bad signings. I don't know. I haven't watched Pablo before. And to be honest, he looks pretty crap from what I've seen of him, but I haven't watched him before. Castellanos looks busy, but I don't see him being an unbelievable finisher. So I don't want to criticise all the new signings. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just saying I don't think West Ham are a perfect path to look at and go, they're doing really well just because they bought players. Because it's not just about buying players. It's about buying the right players and paying the right price for players. We've bought players in the past. The season we went down, by the way, John, we spent 100 million in January. We bought in Rutter for 35 million, was the complete wrong signing. We bought in Voba for 15 million, that's 50 million pounds. He was the wrong sign as well. And we bought in McKennie. I know it was an obligation to buy if we stayed up, but it was there, and we were going to pay that had we stayed in the league, which was another 30 odd million. All right, it wasn't 100 million, but 80 million pounds in January. Did any of them signings make us any better? Maybe outside of Voba for a couple of games. No. So it's not all about that. It's about being. You've got to be smart in the January transfer market, and I think. And in any transfer market, and I think Leeds United are doing that at this moment, if I'm being honest. And I don't think West Ham are. So I wouldn't swap our board for West Ham's at all. No way. The players that West Ham have all signed are all panic buys, says Josh. Yeah, I agree, mate. I do agree. I think that's what it looks like. Van de Ven wants to leave Spurs, says Arthur. Does he? That doesn't surprise me. If West Ham win on Sunday, will the pressure be on too much Monday night? I'm a bit worried about that, mate. I was listening to someone talk about the Sunderland game. We'll probably talk about tomorrow. Obviously, we've got tomorrow's show. We'll talk all about the Leeds and all about sort of what's coming for the weekend. And I'm a bit concerned actually about that. I think that's a fair point to look at because I look at that situation with West Ham, and I actually look at Sunderland's away form. Sunderland's away form is absolutely awful. I was reading today that they scored 5 away goals in 11 games that they've played. I think they've won 2 of the 11 away games that they've played as well. We know Sunderland's been unbelievable this season, but actually their away form is pretty crap. It's always been the home form that's kept them in it. They're still unbeaten at home, and obviously won again at the weekend against Palace. But that does concern me because there's every chance that West Ham win that game. And if West Ham win that game, I think the pressure is seriously on then. Not for us, but I think it'll become more tense. I really do. To be honest, I've always felt this though. I never felt we were going to end the season where Leeds United were just sort of 10, 15 points ahead of West Ham and surviving easily. It was just never going to happen, was it? It was all West Ham were all they're too good. I think that their team, in my opinion, is too good to be this crap for this long. I think there will be something. I think they will get a bit better. I do, but I could be wrong. Daily Mail reporting tonight that Leeds are confident of getting the deal done for JSL. Yeah, we did talk about that, mate. I did talk about that at the start. But you've got, as Josh says, you've got to take them as a pinch of salt. Josh, me and you have been pretty sort of. Are we working in tandem here, mate? Arthur says Somerville going to Spurs. I don't see that happening, mate. Bad journalist, says John. Yeah, fair enough. Anyway, let's move on from the sort of what Daniel Farke has been saying, and we'll get onto this quick Harry Wilson update. There's not loads to talk about on this, but I thought I'd bring it into the show. Basically, Sammy Mockbell, who works for the BBC, and now if we talk about bad journalists and good journalists, this guy works for the BBC. This is going to be absolutely sourced, because the BBC do not... in terms of football transfers, you can say what you want about in other segments, but in terms of football transfers, this will be nailed on the absolute money. It really will. Anyway, and he's saying, Sammy Mockbell, that contract talks are on hold with Harry Wilson until the future of Marco Silva is resolved. Now, this is interesting because Marco Silva looks like he will be exiting in the sort of summer window. I think that's his plan, is that his contract's obviously out in the summer, as is Harry Wilson's, and it looks like that will be the situation. But what Sammy went on to say with this, which I found really interesting, is that there's growing interest in Wilson in January and in the summer. That is something really to bear in mind, because I mean a January deal for us would be perfect, and we know obviously Leeds United have got the links before Terry Wilson. So I just thought that is if that is true, which it obviously will be because it's coming from a BBC reporter, then Marco Silva will not sign with Fulham, and if Marco Silva is the reason that Harry Wilson would sign for Fulham, I don't think Marco Silva's going to sign again at Fulham. So I do think that means that Harry Wilson will leave the football club, which means that obviously then Leeds United potentially have an option to do it in January, because of course they're going to lose him for nothing in the summer. So that was the situation with Harry Wilson. Do we think that's going to happen? Maybe not. I also saw in the Daily Mail article as well, because we talked. I think we talked about this maybe a while ago. That do you remember the Ruben Vargas deal? Apparently that was true, but he picked up another hamstring injury. I don't know if people have seen that, and that sort of killed it. But that basically killed any interest. Apparently as well, obviously we know Leeds United did speak to Werder Bremen regarding Romano Schmidt. That's obviously dead in the water now as well, according to the Daily Mail. So a few other updates as well there. Let's get into a few more comments, and then we might wrap up the show there. 30 likes so far. Keep smashing that like for this top lad. Thank you very much, Philip. I know I butchered that comment, which is the worst case scenario, but thank you. And as I said, if you could help Philip and his mission and my mission to give him a few more likes and subscriptions, that would be absolutely brilliant. Also as well, I should remember to mention this, but there's this hype button, which is like this new thing in YouTube over the last sort of like 6 months, a year. And you can't do it on a live stream. It can only be done like 12 hours after this stream's done, when it converts itself into kind of a normal video. But if you're watching it after this 12-hour mark and you've reached this point, if you could hype the video, that would be fantastic as well. If you could do that, that would be brilliant. Yeah. Anyway. Dan James be like a new signing when he comes back. I just don't know where he's going to play, Arthur. That's my only kind of thing. Disagree, mate. I can't see where it fits. Josh, what is going on here, mate? This is actually a bit concerning, actually. We're just absolutely on the money a bit here. Arthur says Jack Grealish out for Monday night, foot problem. Yeah, he's out for 3 months, I think, mate, which is good news, actually, because I don't think he's been as good as Ndiaye. I always felt Everton's best player is sort of Ilman Ndiaye. But, yeah, always a positive that he's out, let's be honest, because he has got the capability to turn a game on its head. Elliot says, I know Sunderland are very, very, very up and down and have only won 2 away games, but just look at how bad West Ham are at home. It's a fair point. It's a fair point, Elliot, and you are right. I mean, West Ham are absolutely hopeless. They've actually been not bad away from home, but home they are absolutely hopeless. And you always listen to sort of rival West Ham fans talk about West Ham, and they say they're the only club in the country, which I always think is quite funny, but they're the only club in the country that play away from home at a neutral atmosphere. And I actually think, with the way the West Ham fans have been at this moment in time, I do think it almost acts like an away ground. And not even that, I think it puts so much pressure on the West Ham players that they're actually failing in the atmosphere at the moment. And look, I'd rather the game be played at Sunderland just because of Sunderland's fantastic form as of late. And obviously unbeaten at home. I'd definitely rather sort of West Ham go away from home to Sunderland. But you are right, their home form is appalling. It really is. That would be a big game though, because that's obviously 12:30. That's the first game. But if that game can end in a positive result for Leeds United, and I see a positive result as anything other than West Ham winning the game, I'd snap your hands off for a draw for West Ham right now. I don't think that does any really favours for them, especially with the 7-point gap that it still is, or is it 8-point gap or whatever it is. As I said, they're quite a way off yet. But if they were to win that game, it would be a bit of a pain. Josh says, agreeing with everything. Yeah, I know, mate. I don't know what's been going on today. Malcolm says, great show from Wrexham, marching on together. Thank you very much, Malcolm. Thank you very much. Anyway, shall we wrap up the show there, everybody? Thanks all for watching, as always. I hope you've enjoyed the show tonight. And, of course, tomorrow, as you all know, it is my favourite show. We are going to be doing the Friday night show. And now the Friday night show, for anyone that doesn't go, it's always, to be honest, they're all in this sort of mould at this moment. But it's a bit more relaxed. Sometimes I even have a beer, very rarely, because usually I'm on a Saturday. But sometimes I do. But it's very relaxed. We obviously get through all those guys' comments. And it's just it's always a good time. So, yeah, if you do want to join tomorrow, obviously at 8 PM, like always. And I don't think I'll be doing a Saturday show either, because I've got a whole busy day on Saturday, in truth. So I might have a day off. But, as I said, yeah, turn around for Saturday. And, of course, we'll be back on Sunday as well. But other than that, if you've enjoyed the show, as I said, like, subscribe, all that good stuff does a massive help the channel. I'll see you tomorrow. And, of course, if you've just joined, feel free to slip back. We've talked for 32 minutes and 29 seconds so far. So there's all that part of the show where we talk all about Leeds United, all about everything, which you're more than welcome to go watch. As well, other than that, though, as I said, I will see you tomorrow, everybody. Bye for now.